Alright guys, we're back for our second workshop and we're going to focus on finance foundations, posting, design, tax, dimensions, and the accounting periods. And we might get into a little banking. Let's see how we go. Alright, so we are here in our master template. Now, since I've refreshed, you'll notice the name up the top is master template. And it's changed in the list now, but as we saw in the last video, it's still build dynamics, which is good, and that's what we want. Okay, and I'm happy adapting what I've already got here with my chart of accounts. So I'm happy to take what they've got. I might insert a few GL codes here and there, but the posting setup is already pretty well established. But before we go too far, master data in Business Central refers to a couple of different things that you need to be aware of. Master data is data that's used to flow through the system. When you get to a document, it inherits that data to help you with that transaction. For example, your customer data, your vendor data, your items, your bank accounts. One of those is actually your location. So before we go too far, I want to actually set my locations here, and as you can see, I have what's referred to as our own logistics. I've got silver, white, yellow, and main, and I'm just gonna delete what we're not using because our demo that we're setting up here is for a very simple get a company up and running with a warehouse. We're gonna keep our main location, okay, and this here is our we're just going to take this as it is. And warehousing, we are wanting to do some warehousing. Normally, I would go and enable all of the bins configuration. The other thing that I would note for this is that we really should be setting dimensions on our master data. And so the dimensions is something we're about to talk about. And for example, I would call this one of our warehouses. So I'm going to go into the dimensions, and in dimensions, in the warehouse, I click dimension value, and I'm going to create one here called Redland Bay. And we now have a value. I'm going to escape out back into my dimension card here for my location. And I preset against this location. It's in Redland Bay. Any transaction that includes the main warehouse now is going to insert that dimension into the general ledger entries. So I've got a very simple location, and when I was doing the company information, all right, I didn't input the shipping details because we're going to use a location. That's going to be our main warehouse location. Okay, so that means any purchase order, any sales order, by default will have that location. Alternatively, if you've got multiple locations, you set the default based on the customer or the vendor transaction that you're facilitating. Base calendar, you could create a calendar here. For example, I would call this Queensland. And we're going to say Queensland. And why do we do this? It tells us when we're closed. For example, here in Queensland, if I go to this particular date, my date is Sunday the 5th. On the 6th, it is a non-working day. Why do we do base calendars? Because then we know per state when we're working, when we're not. All right, I'm not worried about the payments at the moment. I'm just going to close out of the setup. We've got our main location, and we're at a point now where the data will start coming together for us. So we've got our chart of accounts. I'm going to go back to my general ledger setup. Okay. And allow posting from and to is explained in our tutorials. This is just your start and stop. I'm not going to worry about this at the moment. I'm leaving all of my details here, but my address format is city, state, postcode. I'm going to change that. Contact after the company name, that's fine. We've got up my rounding. I'm happy with all of this here. And I'm going to scroll down, and here we've got an issue where I don't have my primary dimension set. And so in the header, I'm going to choose from my dimensions that are already here. I believe that I'm going to use my customer as my global dimension, and I'm going to use, what do we want to do? I'm going to use my product code, and I'm going to set start, and that's going to push that to the whole system. So your global dimensions are one of 8 dimensions, and it means that you can report on by customer or by product. You might want it to be by salesperson, and then for the rest of them, I'm just going to set them here as a shortcut. Purchaser, vendor, warehouse, and salesperson. All right, so we've got all of our dimensions set in the general ledger setup. Now, this means that when I look at a line, when you look at a journal or you look at a sales line, you're going to see also these 8 columns. It helps you break up your data. All right, my currency is fine. I'm in AUD. Make sure you've got your currency set. And we've talked about local functionalities, and I'm not changing any of these payment tolerances, so I'm going to leave them here as default. So we've now got to go and take a quick look at some of the setup in manual setup, and I'm going to encourage you to try and understand the posting setup. But you'll notice at the top here, the general, this is really simple, really simple. So I go open in Excel, it downloads my Excel file opens. Let me drag it over the window. And I got an Excel file that looks like this. And under general, I just go company. So here I go into company and I go, oh, that's the company information that I told you about before. We've already filled this in. So I go back to my Excel file. Helps if my go back to my Excel file and I just mark that column as green, just like that. And then I go through my country regions and I check it. I'm happy with what's here. And I go straight back to the same file, and I go, yep, that's great. I go to my source codes, and these are a source of, these are default straight out of the system, so they've been provided by Microsoft. If you went with a blank template, you wouldn't have any. I'm going to leave this at the moment. Reason codes are the same. There's no reason code. So we do need a reason code by default. Let's, for example, to do a credit to a customer, it might be cancelled or returns. So we're going to need some return reason codes, right, in the sales setup and the purchase setup. Otherwise, your returns don't work. The postcodes, this just shows us our postcode relationship between city and state and postcode. If there's a postcode missing, how do you fix it? Just click new, put it in there, okay? So that's your postcode. Your number series is the default numbering that's going to show up in all of our setups. It's already there, okay? So we've inherited a setup with Microsoft that's going to help us speed things up. Our currencies, these are the currencies that could be supported if we chose to. We don't yet have an exchange rate set up. I'll be covering that in another video where we'll go through and just make sure we have an exchange rate service. And the one that I use in Australia is the Reserve Bank of Australia. It's a free service and it gives you currency rate service to give you a valuation on that. So we'll come to that. So I'm going to come back to that, and the user setup, which basically covers all of your users, and you want to say what their role is, what their language files are, what is their default company. And that really gets us through the general. I'm just going to check off this file. And what I've done is I need to come back to the reason code. So I'm going to go orange. The postcodes, so source codes is good. So let's make that green. Number series is fine for now. Currencies needs us to come back to. and user settings. And this is how you can turn around and move through the system quite quickly. One of the first things when we're talking about finance that we want to focus on is actually accounting periods. Now, what does that mean? It means that for us to trade in Business Central, a period is a month. How many periods do we want to create? And so if we said, I want to start date, I'm going to start at the 1st of the 7th, 23, like that, okay, which is July, and that's the new fiscal year. I can then create from that date how many years, and I'm going to say 48 periods, 48 months, a month at a time, and there we go, we have it. And I'm going to focus on July. I've clicked on the first line. I'm going to filter to this value and just tick in the box for each of the Julys, which sets the beginning of our financial year. All right. So our financial accounting periods is really important for us to set. The other one for us is what's referred to as an inventory period. And inventory periods are different. We actually set them based on what is the last day of the month. So 31st, 7th, 23rd is the last day of the month. And then we continue down. So if we go 31st, I'm just going to press F8. And that's July. And then I'll go to the 31st. F8 fills from above, and I would fill that down like that. So I have to fill that down and fill this out for every single period. Now, I've kept the accounting periods open since 23 because we're going to bring in trial balances. I'm not going to bring in the inventory from that period. So we're going to bring this in for the first 31st, 25, 31st. Yep, we're going to rename that. 31st, 8, 25, 30th of 9th, 25. You notice I'm using full stops. Full stops are a lot easier to use. And we have ourselves counting periods just like that. 12. I'm gonna just leave it at that for now for the next couple of months. And so the inventory is relating to the warehousing and quantities, whereas accounting is financial. So we've got that, and we've done the accounting periods. Our general journal templates are here out of the box, ready to go. So we're not going to focus on this right now. We're going to come back, and there are tutorials on how to do your general journals. I'm not going to spend time on that right now. But as we continue going through this, we've talked about the general ledger. We did the general ledger setup before. I'm not going to touch cost accounting right now. My bank import and export, this is how we turn around. We can actually bring in a bank file. So importing your bank statements into the system. Sales and inventory forecast is your forecasting, right? And how you set that up. There's tutorials on that. Late payment prediction, again, super cool. Using some AI, it will turn around and tell you customers that are going to default on you. It's a cool feature. But the ones that I'm interested in getting into is this. So there's a business group and a product group plus a posting group is a combination of the two. So let's take a look. My business group in this company by default is domestic. I'm not going to use EU, so I'm going to delete that. We've got export for overseas, and then I've got intercompany. And because we're in Australia, we don't care for the EU. All right. So my default GST posting group, if we're, yeah, that's fine. And for export is export, and for intercompany is, I'm going to leave that blank at the moment because that's not there. But we have here a combination of what is referred to as a code that applies against the customer or vendor's card with what applies against your item. And so at the moment we've got retail, we've got raw materials, non-GST miscellaneous manufacturing, freight, So this is all, there's a lot here, okay? But this is not my chart of accounts. So let's go take a look at my chart of accounts. I've just right-clicked on the tab and hit duplicate. I'm going to go into my chart of accounts. I'm going to go filter to my income statement. And I've got store sales, so in the store, online sales, stock sales. So let's get a little bit more prickly here. Let's say that this is this is merchandise. This one here is books and media, and my next one here is signage. And I've got 3 different examples: 4110, 4115, 4120. So what we're wanting to do is we're going to clear this list up. I'm going to leave freight there. Manufacturing, I'm going to get rid of. We're going to get rid of non-GST, raw materials. I'm just going to rename raw materials and retail. So let's start here. So this one here is going to be merchandise. And I'm going to say here, books. And services, I'm going to rename this to signage. And hopefully this starts to make sense with our next section, which is now, but the key thing here for each of these is GST does apply to each of them. That's fine. And freight and miscellaneous, we've got 2 miscellaneous, freight, miscellaneous. I'm going to get rid of this one here. And all right, cool. Miscellaneous, non-GST, let's clear that out just to clear up the list. And now we're going to go to the general posting setup. And this is where it combines the customer's type, the product type, into a setup. All right. So we've got books, we've got merch, and we've got signs. There they are. And I've got rid of manufacturing. So I'm going to delete manufacturing out of here. So let's just clear that and delete those. Don't want that there. All right, so what is this page? This is effectively turning around and saying when it's a domestic customer that buys a book, this is the sales account. This is where we do credits and discounts. This is how we do prepayments. So I'm going to take that prepayment, this prepayment GL code, and I'm going to take it all the way down the whole sheet because we want to use that. Okay. And you'll see EU is not on the list. We got rid of EU. So we're going to clear that out. Non-GST is another one that I cleared off my example for today. So I'm just going to delete those because we don't trade like that. And clear filter. And we've got ourselves a bit of a chart again. Now, why is it blank? And there's some circumstances where you pick an item on a journal, but there's no customer vendor. Because there's no GL code, it will fail the transaction. Okay, if somebody tries to do something revenue, COGS related. However, there's times when we're applying a journal where it needs to actually affect the inventory movements, etc. And if you don't have this set up, it will fail. All right. So over here, you can see whether it's blocked, just here, view all accounts and lookup. You've got plenty of options here. I've got the prepayment. I'm going to set that as well. So let me just do that. And I want that to be consistent across all of these columns. So we can do prepayments. Now, as we get over here, there's some of the setups here that just don't apply because we're not doing manufacturing. Okay, so the direct cost, overhead, purchase variances. It's just not going to apply to what we're doing. And this is our first posting setup. Now, in my videos here with the, let's go up to the top. I'm going to click this video.
I took 2 things that I love.
And just let the ad play. All right, here we go. And you'll see pictures like this that explain how a document like an invoice or a purchase order has a header, which is your customer, vendor, and location. And then you've got lines, which includes a GL, an item, charge item, resources, or assets on the line combined together to create these posting setups. Okay, and so the videos are worth watching as I take it through. I take it all the way through, and it gives an outcome that hopefully will help you understand. And so we step through it one step at a time through those videos. So I highly recommend that you go and you get your hands on that and watch these videos, the posting setups. All right. So we're back in Business Central. We've gone through and we've cleaned up enough of my revenue and my COGS for my general business groups. I've got my statement template. Okay, if I go have a look, I'm not going to play with that right now. So I'm going back to my Excel file and I'm going to update where I'm up to. Accounting periods, good, that's green. General journal templates, I'll come back to that. Cost accounting, let's just make that gray. I don't want to do that right now. The general ledger we checked, so that's good. I'm going to make that green. Bank importing, exporting, I'm going to leave at the moment. Make orange. Sales inventory forecast, not an interest for me to get off the ground. Late payment prediction, again, something I can come back to another time when I'm up and running. But the posting setups for now, that's enough for me to actually get up and running. My GST statement, I definitely need to come back to, otherwise I can't do my reporting. All right, and then we're going to move over to our bank accounts. So this is our next posting group that we need to focus on. And so in the chart of accounts, if we flick over to our balance sheet, you can see up the top, we had NAB business account is what I renamed the main account to, 1010, and I'm going to go into cash management into my bank accounts, and I can see I don't have a bank account added. So I'm going to add my bank account, and I'm going to call this NAB General. Now, BSB, I don't know the NAB's BSB, so let's just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That should be it, 6 digits, and it's going to be 9999, 9999. Cool, that's our bank account. Now, on a bank account card, there's very little that we need to fill in. Now, you'll notice that there's merge fields. You notice that on the location when we're over on the location. And so in your location, we had these address details. It's not used unless we choose to merge in our forms to use these as merge fields. So it's not overly critical that that's filled in. The same thing comes out for banking. When you're banking from one bank account to another, there are some critical fields, but the address details are not. So let's take a look here. Okay. Users default for this currency. So if this is in AUD, this is the default account. If we change currency, it can change to the default bank account for that currency on transactions. Let's keep going down. Show more. So it's just contact details. Here we go. The currency is blank. Why is it blank? When you're in local currency, you do not fill this in. If you do, you're going to get a whole heap of zero FX related journals created, and it floods your system. And so Microsoft once upon a time used to recommend doing it, and then it flipped around a little bit, where our recommendation is per Microsoft's, don't put it in there, right? If it's USD, it will be USD. You will even notice in the currencies table that when we were in here, we can see that we don't have an AUD. So this is loaded for Australia. Microsoft does not give it filled in. So we're leaving this blank, okay? but we've got to have a posting group here to make this work. So I can select from a full list here and load it in front of me, but I'm going to edit the list, and this one here is our NAB business account. So I'm going to call this NAB general. Okay. And the other accounts were just placeholders that were created by the setup. We don't really need them here. They're not really doing anything, so I can delete them out. The operating isn't being used. And the cash account is there. There's a cash account. I'll leave that there. And yeah, we're going to get rid of that. So we've only got one bank account. Nice and simple, NAB general. Now, why do we do this? That's interesting. Excuse me. The bank account here for NAB general, it's just pointed out to me that on the general ledger, we're actually allowing direct posting, and it's telling us don't do that. You should turn that off. Why is that? Well, when you have a sub-ledger, your sub-ledger controls the ledger. So when you post to the bank, it posts to the general ledger. If you allow direct posting and your finance team are posting straight to the GL, your bank ledger falls out of reconciliation. And so by default, Microsoft's pulling us up on that and saying, hey, when I selected that account, it now hasn't thrown an error. So we need under posting, okay, we need to know that just there. The next thing that you've got for your bank account is how do we import and how do we export? So if we're turning around and we're exporting, okay, for you to a particular format, it's going to come out as an ABA file. And we need to build that in here as a setup, which we'll show you in another video. And then as for your bank statement import, you've got to create this import capacity. So if I said NAB import, okay, direction, it's an import, okay? And I'm just going to go bank statement file import wizard. And so this wizard will allow us, so it's going to say define the bank statement file, lay it yourself, yes. All right, headlines to skip, 1. Because your bank file, as you download a CSV of your statement, will have 1 or 2 or 3 lines. You've just got to choose what we're skipping and when the content starts. And then you choose what the separator is. It's a comma or a semicolon, right? How many columns are there? All right, let's say that there's 6 and it's comma separated. The date column is which column? The amount is which column? The description is which column? And you count from left to right and you set the columns and you say, well, the date is the 1st, the amount is the 5th, and the description is 2. Okay. The date format, okay, so you put the format in, and the decimal separator is a dot. And so, as you can see, it's that like that. Try it out. Now, you can test it by uploading your statement, and it will tell you if it's going to work or not. And so that's how we configure, and I'm going to call this NAB, and we're going to link it up to the bank account, NAB general, and hit finish. Yeah, I already created one called NAB, so let's call this NAB1 for now. All right, so we've got ourselves a way to import the statement. Now you can run a wizard, and there's another wizard in Business Central which allows you to take your bank statement file, upload it in the wizard, and it goes, here's your file, which columns are what? And it does the same thing that we just did manually. All right. So we're going to spend a bit more time later on this, okay? But you are doing EFT. It does require balancing. What is the name that we're paying from with this bank? That's the EFT details. This is stuff that we're going to have to get from your bank to do EFT. Otherwise, EFT will not work. So loading your ABA file, you upload the ABA, and that's going to fail, okay? So we'll worry about banking in a separate tutorial for banking. I'm not right now. We just need to get the system up and running, but that is a thing that we need to come back to. So what we've done here is we've set ourselves a posting group, which was the objective. We've also set up the rest of the account. We can now close it. If you wanted to, you could set a dimension here on a bank, and then it will go to your general ledger for everything that hits that bank account. Okay, so I'm going back to my sheet. Bank is looking good. I'm going to come back to it, okay, because there's some setup there that I need to do. If you want, you would add some comments here saying, I need to come back. I need to come back to this. All right. Now, what we've got here, as we go back into our list, is now similar to the general business, general product, and posting setup. There's the GST posting, the GST business, GST product, and GST setup. So if you look at the business, it looks the same as the other one. I'm going to delete the EU, and that looks good. So domestic, export, foreign, and I'm going to go to the product groups. So this is really just saying GST, non-GST, full. So this is allowing for VAT. We're not doing VAT, so I'm going to delete those. Get rid of VAT. And we might do GST 10, non-GST, GST free. Like that. And you might have other GST codes that you want to turn around and run. So now that we've got those two, you've got your setup, and your setup comes in. And again, we said this before, we're going to delete the EU. Delete the EU. We're not doing VAT, so that's fine. GST, non-GST, and I'm going to order by this so I can see I've got a few set here, and I'm going to set GST free. Yeah, that's fine. Domestic GST free. Export GST free. Miscellaneous GST free. All right. Okay, so we've got our GST frees, and I can now put a description on here. I can choose the GST codes don't change, so I'm just going to use the F8 key all the way down here and make sure that they're filled in. This one's supposed to be blank. Okay. All right, so now we've got ourselves our GST free. We've got to choose what we're doing here. It is 0, so it's 0%. Okay, and you would actually put a GST identifier here, which would be GST free. And the GST identifier is the thing that shows up on your statement. There we go. Excellent. Cool. Now, from a setup perspective, you can spend a lot of time on this if you're doing import, if you're doing export, and you're wanting to take up consideration if you're doing services like NDIS or other government aged care services. You may set up different codes, different scenarios. Your customer group might not be domestic, foreign, or domestic export. It might be the type of tax bracket customer that you're wanting to deal with, because you want to break it up by customer. And so we recommend you speak to one of our accountants or speak to an accountant. We have staff that are CPAs and CAs, chartered accountants, chartered practicing accountant on our team. And we recommend that you have a chat and understand from a tax perspective if you're trying to get this off the ground. Next on the list, dimensions. We're here, and we can see here that we've got some dimensions that I've added. And because I wanted to cheat a little bit with this, I've installed one of the Build Dynamics extensions, and this one here is called the Dimension Maker. Okay, and what it does is it auto creates dimension values for key master data types. Why do I do that? Because I don't want to do it. I'm lazy, and so it's called BD dimension setup. And all I've done is select the dimension code. And what it means is when I add a customer, and the customer's ID might be C101010, it's going to create a dimension called C1010 by that customer's name. If you change the customer's name, it will update the dimension. Does the same for vendors, for products, for warehouses, initiated postcode. So as soon as you apply and set up a new address on a vendor, it will update the postcode for that vendor or customer and the dimension associated with it. So it gives us some really cool tight dimensions out of the box that I now don't have to think about, because that's what I'm wanting to segregate. Now you may have ANZSIC, that one there, okay, and that's the Australian and New Zealand industry code, and so you may want to create those and tag your customers against that. You may want to tag basically how they were introduced to you. So you could call this in, how did the customer get introduced to you? You create a dimension for that came from Facebook, Google, whatever else, and then every transaction gets attributed. One of our customers calls this the customer attribute, or attribution, where they came from. And so you may want a team dimension who's taking credit for this running through a business division. You may also have a division code. You might call it an expense code. There's all sorts of things we can do here. This is just a start to get your thought pattern going. I have customers using generally on average about 8 to 12. Some customers use 30 dimensions, and they set it up on each of their master datas quite quickly out of the box. Analysis by dimension is really, really cool. We're not going to talk about that now, but this allows you basically to pivot your data. So you could say, show me every customer trading at this postcode, or show me, you can plug in Power BI to Business Central, suck in those dimensions back and say it's postcodes, and then do geothermal hot spots on an Australian map or a state map, showing you where your revenue is coming from. All right. The GST setup is something that needs to be considered. The GST report setup and the report configuration, so how you're turning around reporting your GST and your clauses. This all needs configuration, and this is a technical side where my advice to you is what I do. Get in touch with your accountants and get a consultant to double check this piece. This isn't going to stop the system working for you to get into testing, but it is something before you go live that they rectify and ensure that they're happy with the GST side of things. And then the cash flow setup, which is effectively how are we turning around and tracking cash flow? Do we want to be turning around and doing some cool stuff with some automation and basically assuming and collecting and counting what are your average AR and AP days and all of that type of stuff. So really from the top, sticking to the manual setup, the finance setup, as you've seen, and I've flown through it. I'm trying to keep these videos under 30 minutes each. I'm flying through it. We would normally take 2 hours to go through that slowly. So if you pace yourself with each of these for a couple of hours a day, you'll find you can get through a build of Business Central to a point where you could use it with one customer, one item, and start testing. Is that all right? So yeah, there's a fair bit there. I guess the chart of accounts, once you've passed and we go back to the chart of accounts, you've actually got something that's referred to as your general ledger account categories. Now this is out of the box, and you'll notice that these are totals. So they're saying from 1200 to 1290 is our accounts receivable. Whereas for prepaid expenses, it's saying 1400 plus 1511. You'll notice in some of these, they're doing formulas from 2000 to 2010 plus 2101 to 2104 plus. And so you can do formulas to create what is our categorization of the chart of accounts. Why do we do this? This helps you with your reporting. It simplifies the outputs. And so this is something that if you have edited your chart of accounts the way I did, by keeping within the totals, all of this still applies. If you butchered it and added thousands of different lines into it, you're going to have to remap your general ledger account categories. Okay, it's something that you'll need to do. Generally speaking, you can leave this and leave it out of the box if you're keeping to the chart of accounts that's been provided. Is that cool? All right. So we've talked through that. I think from a posting setup, because there's so many there to think about, there's a couple more that I would focus on now, which relates to the posting setups I showed you on that video. One of those is the customer. So the customer posting group is just saying, if you're domestic, where are my receivables going to? Now, again, if I've kept to the system and I ain't changed them, these geocodes are still the same. This all still applies, but I'm getting rid of EU because I don't want it in my books. Getting rid of this language, non-EU, because it's not applicable to me. Okay, so customer posting group says receivable account, services, payment discounts, interest, additional fees, rounding, and so on. Not all of these are relevant, but it's good to have it set up. So out of the box with my setup, it's already there. Vendor is the other one, and it's going to be the same thing. So I'm going to delete a U because I don't want it. I'm going to get rid of this foreign vendors non-EU because it means nothing to me. And I've got my payables account here, but now I can see payables, vendors, domestic, foreign, and intercompany. And it shows that they're split as separate geocodes. Okay, whereas everything else is generally pretty much the same. So it allows me to see my receivables for external. Now, if you were using, for example, receivables from customers, receivables from NDIS, receivables from government, you could actually have them as 3 separate vendor posting groups, and this is going to give you a separate way to filter your receivables in big amounts. So as a big group, if you're turning over a decent amount of revenue, you may want to split this and not think just domestic foreign. You may want to split your groups up into chunk sizes. That's why we split out into companies. If it's an associated entity, I want to show that separately from my vendors. All right. Okay. So once you've got, so we've done our product, we've done our GST, we've done our customer and vendor. Let's now look at what we refer to against the location. So I'm going to go back to my location. I'm going to show you where you get to the inventory posting group. So there it's got inventory posting set up here. Okay. And the posting setup is going to refer to, look at that. This one's blank. Let's clear this filter. Aha. So, all right. So I'm going to hijack this one because we don't have silver anymore. And I'm going to delete these 2 here. Delete those. And these are all important to be, I need main for raw materials, main for resale. Okay. And so main resale, main finished. There we go. All right, so I've got my finished goods just here. This one's here, raw materials. Okay. And then I can use this same methodology. So this is my interim. So this one here, I want to be resale interim, raw materials interim, and finished interim. Okay. The WIP account's the same, so I'm just going to take that. The WIP account's used for your projects, and then your materials variances here isn't going to apply because we're not using manufacturing. And so these these fields here are just not even used because we're not doing manufacturing within this version. And so the location becomes like your business customer type. This goes against the product. It's either resale or it's a finished good because we made it. We're not going to be making goods in this system. So I could have deleted that out, but I'm leaving it here for one of you that's watching this to go, okay, I could take that. What is a finished good? You've gone and assembled or manufactured it. What is a raw material? It's something that you're storing that does not go straight to market. It's what you use to make a product. And a resale product is something that you buy and sell. You buy it straight from a supplier and sell it to the customer. So it's goods that you could refer to as standard inventory. Okay. All right. So we've got our inventory posting groups. I think for now, like in this setup, I would also consider your fixed assets. And in your fixed asset setup, you'll see you've got a fixed asset posting group. Again, out of the box, it's come in. As long as we're not changing our codes and you're not changing what we refer to as our classes, which is financial, intangible, tangible. We're not changing our subclasses, equipment, goodwill. You could add to it, okay? But we're not really changing it heavily. And our locations, they just be locations. You can edit that. Realistically, out of the box, fixed assets is going to work for you, right? But I still would review it. And this is something that I would refer to your accountant, because most of my customers we take over, their accountants are looking after the fixed assets, and their accountants are super appreciative of Business Central doing it moving forward. So that becomes an accountant conversation. All right. I think other than talking through the general ledger setup, I'm going to go back to the gen setup. Making sure you understand what this means. So amount decimal places and unit amount decimal places. What does it mean? Okay. So show to, summarize to 2, but calculate from 5. See that? Okay. Show to, calculate to. The unit rounding precision is to 3 decimal places and 2 decimal places. You need to talk with your finance team or your accountant and make sure you understand the impact of rounding. Rounding becomes a problem, especially if you've got multiple systems in your business. If you're synchronizing invoices into this from another system and it's roundings on 5 decimal places and you run this on 2, you're going to have a problem. Your figures won't stack up. You'll find invoices that you enter don't total the same balance. You'll always be out a couple of cents. And you might find this with your vendors. When you type their bill in, your bill doesn't stack up. It's because of the rounding precision within Business Central. Okay, and Business Central can go all the way out over 20 decimals. So it can support any level of complexity that you may have on the planet, and you can adjust accordingly to it. But rounding precision is something that you need to think about. And then the dimensions, what we talked about before, is just making sure that you've thought of how you're going to break apart your dimensions. One of them that I didn't do before, I'm going to go do now, is department. And we're going to keep this simple. We've got sales, supplier, all right. Bit of copy paste. Cool. And we've got ourselves some dimension values for our department. And one of them that I really don't care too much for here, we are using initiator. I don't need purchaser or salesperson because it's the same thing. So I'm going to put department in here. Actually, I feel that the product can come out here. So I'm going to change my product to department. And so if I'm wanting to run a P&L by department, or by customer. They're the common things that we would use. And out here, I'm going to push my product code. There we go. And one of the other things you may want on your product is manufacturer, or country of origin as a dimension. There's all sorts of things you could do that you could track on there. I think for this video we're coming to the part where we can wrap up. But the big focus for you today is you've got a general ledger, you've got your general ledger categories, you've got to think about your dimensions. Okay, it's important for you to think about dimensions. You're posting setups from your manual setup page. We've talked through finance and just making sure you understand what each of these setups do and how they operate. And that's going to give you the ability to get this thing moving a lot quicker, right? As long as you've thought. So please don't play with customers, vendors, items yet. Don't do it. I know you're like itching. You've got to do it. No. Focus on your chart of accounts. Think about how you want your profit and loss to work. Cut back within means. Make sure that the totals still work on, and you can tell that it will work or not. You go home and indent, and if it's broken, it will throw an error. Okay? It's a little check thing there. And what I mean here is you can see here this heading is a heading, and then the begin total, and then it starts to paragraph in, right? And you can see that's a level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, okay? And you can go indent as far as you want on your chart of accounts, okay? Within reason, but I've seen people go all pretty deep. But it's got to close out. So the end total is the end of this. And then the next end total is their end total. And then you're going to get a ton of end totals here, just here, that are finishing and wrapping up the whole section. These totals need to balance. And your headings need to come to an end. Okay, so everything must start and stop. You've got to think both sides. You can't just put a heading and forget about the tail of it, and then your totals, the totaling figure needs to actually add up. If you add a begin total, end total, and you don't do this, it will not work. Your system will not work properly. All right. I think that's good for today. I want to move into next steps for us is going to be covering some of the setup for sales and purchasing and inventory and warehousing. And then we're going to move into adding some master data, copying the company, and start playing with it and getting it up and running so we can actually do some transactions. I hope you've enjoyed today. Please give us a thumbs up, like the video, share it, and please subscribe and follow along this journey. You're going to see by the end of it, we will be up and running. It's going to be phenomenal. Thank you very much.